All right, so you're ready to build, right? You've got your plans all set, budget's approved. But hold on a second before you go and order all that steel.
Yeah, you really got to make sure you know what you're getting into when it comes to carbon steel plates.
These things are everywhere, but most of us don't even think about them. Bridges, buildings, oil rigs, all held together with carbon steel plates.
Unsung heroes, really.
Absolutely. And today we are going on a deep dive into their world, figuring out what makes a truly great carbon steel plate.
And we're going to be drawing some insights from the folks over at the Steel Talks Industry Insights podcast, some real experts on the subject.
So if you want to make sure your project is built on a solid foundation, literally, this is the episode for you.
No cutting corners here. Let's get into it.
Let's start at the very beginning. Raw materials. The podcast really emphasized the importance of high-quality iron ore. I mean, why is that so crucial?
Well, it all comes back to the basics.
Like the saying goes, garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. It's like building a house on sand. You need a strong foundation, and that starts with the iron ore.
It's the bedrock of the whole operation, literally.
Right. Using that top-notch ore can really make a huge difference in the final product.
Like, how much of a difference are we talking?
Well, think about this. Using the good stuff can increase a plate's load-bearing capacity by a significant margin. We're talking maybe even up to 15%.
Wow, 15%. That's not insignificant.
It's huge. That could be the difference between a bridge that lasts for, say, 50 years and one that stands strong for 75.
So it's not just about raw strength. It's about longevity, too.
Absolutely. Every single bit counts when you're talking about structures that need to last for decades.
The Steel Talks folks also mentioned something about consistency being key when it comes to the raw materials. What do they mean by that?
Consistency is really the name of the game here. Think of it like baking a cake. You wouldn't want to, use a different type of flour in each batch, right? You want that perfect, predictable outcome every time.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. You want your cake to rise the same way every time.
Exactly. It's the same deal with steel. A consistent chemical makeup in those raw materials is absolutely vital.
So any variation can really mess things up.
Oh, absolutely. Even small variations can lead to weak spots, defects, you name it. It's like having a loose thread in a sweater. It can unravel the whole thing.
And we're talking about bridges and buildings here.
Yeah, we don't want those unraveled.
So we've talked about the raw materials, the iron ore, the consistency, all of that good stuff. Now let's move on to the shaping process.
The real artistry of steel making.
The Steel Talks podcast mentioned two main methods, hot rolling and cold rolling. I got to be honest, those terms always sounded a bit intimidating to me. Can you break those down and explain why one might be chosen over the other?
Of course. So hot rolling, imagine a blacksmith working with red hot metal.
That's the kind of image I get, yeah.
It's pretty much that. The steel is heated up to incredibly high temperatures, making it really malleable, like super easy to shape.
Okay, so basically you're making it like Play-Doh so you can form it into those big plates.
Exactly. And because you're working with it at such high temperatures, you get these incredibly strong plates. Perfect for things like those massive beams used in skyscrapers and bridges. They can handle enormous loads.
Hot rolled, heavy duty.
Now, cold rolling. Totally different process. It happens at much lower temperatures.
So not red hot, glowing steel in this case.
No, it's more precise. It's almost like shaping clay on a potter's wheel. You're aiming for a much smoother finish, and you need that extra control for those precise shapes.
So if I'm getting this right, cold rolled is used for, say, car parts, appliances, things like that.
You got it. It's about precision and aesthetics in those cases.
So hot rolled for the heavy lifters and cold rolled for the detail work. Now, if I were to walk into a steel yard, is there any way I could tell the difference between a hot rolled plate and a cold rolled one? Just by looking at them?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can usually tell by the surface. Hot rolled plates, they tend to have a rougher surface. It might even have some scale on it from the heat.
And cold rolled?
Cold rolled is going to be noticeably smoother, maybe even a little bit shiny depending on the specific finish.
All right, so we've covered raw materials and the shaping process. We've got these big, strong plates ready to go. But wait, there's more.
Of course.
The Steel Talks podcast spent a good chunk of time on something called heat treatment. This is where it starts to sound a bit like magic to me.
Well, it might seem like magic, but really it's all about manipulating the steel at a molecular level.
Right, right. So can you demystify heat treatment for us?
Definitely. It's all about refining the steel's properties to make it even better suited for its final job. There are two main processes we need to talk about here: annealing and tempering. Think of annealing like giving the steel a nice long massage after a tough workout.
So it's relaxing the steel after all that rolling and shaping.
Exactly. It relieves all those internal stresses that build up during the rolling process, and by doing that, it makes the steel more ductile, meaning it can bend without breaking.
Kind of like stretching after exercise.
Yeah, exactly like that. It prevents the steel from being too brittle. Then we have tempering. Now, tempering is more like a focused workout for the steel.
Okay, so it's about making it tougher.
Precisely. Tempering increases its hardness and wear resistance. It makes it much more durable in the long run.
So annealing for flexibility and tempering for toughness.
Got it.
But even after all these processes, how can we be absolutely sure that these carbon steel plates are actually up to snuff? I mean, how do we know they're going to perform as expected?
That is a great question. And the answer is quality control.
So it's not enough to just eyeball it and say, yep, that looks like a strong piece of steel.
Not at all. Quality control is all about rigorous testing, making sure these plates meet the highest standards. Think of it as a series of tests, or maybe a medical checkup for your steel plates. They go through a whole battery of examinations to prove their worth.
Sounds intense. What kind of tests are we talking about here?
Well, for starters, there's chemical composition analysis. It's like a blood test, making sure the steel's makeup is precisely what it should be. We're talking about checking the levels of carbon, manganese, silicon, all those elements that contribute to the steel's properties. Then there are some really cool non-destructive tests, like ultrasonic testing.
Ultrasonic testing, huh? Sounds fancy.
It is pretty cool. It uses sound waves to detect any hidden flaws beneath the surface. Think of it like an X-ray, but for steel.
So it can see things we can't see with the naked eye. That's amazing. So are there specific rules or standards that these tests have to follow? How do we know that a test done in one place means the same thing as a test done somewhere else?
Oh, absolutely. It's not just random testing. There are strict international standards that everyone in the industry follows.
So it's not just a matter of passing or failing. It's about meeting these globally recognized benchmarks.
Exactly. Some of the big ones you'll hear about are the ASTM standards and the ISO standards. These are like the gold standard when it comes to steel quality. If you see those stamps of approval, you know you're dealing with the good stuff.
So these certifications are definitely something to look out for when you're shopping for steel, especially if you're planning a major construction project. But where do you even begin to find the right supplier? I mean, there are so many companies out there. How do you know who to trust?
Yeah, finding the right supplier is just as important as understanding the material itself.
So where do you start?
Well, like you said, certifications are a big one. Make sure the supplier you're considering has all the right credentials. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Does their product range meet your specific needs? Do they have a good track record? Talk to other people in the industry, get some recommendations.
Word of mouth is always helpful.
Absolutely. And remember, a good supplier shouldn't just be a vendor, they should be a partner. They should be willing to work with you, understand your project, and help you choose the perfect steel grade and dimensions for your needs.
So it's about more than just placing an order. It's about finding someone who speaks your language, someone you can actually collaborate with.
Exactly. A good supplier can be an invaluable resource.
So, taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture here, if we're talking about building anything that needs to stand the test of time, bridges, buildings, anything really, investing in those high-quality carbon steel plates, well, that's an investment in the long-term success of the entire project, Ray.
100%. It's like they always say, you can pay now or you can pay later.
And paying later with steel, that sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, you don't want to be dealing with repairs, delays, or even worse, safety risks down the road. Think about it. A bridge with weak supports, a building that can't withstand the elements. Those are the hidden costs that can quickly outweigh any savings you might have made up front by choosing a cheaper option.
So cutting corners on steel is never a good idea. It's about peace of mind, knowing that you've built something that will last.
Exactly. And in many cases, it's about safety too.
Well, there you have it, folks. A deep dive into the world of carbon steel plates. It's definitely more complex than meets the eye.
It's a fascinating world and incredibly important to so many industries.
If you're looking to start a construction project, don't underestimate the importance of doing your homework. Choose your materials wisely, partner with a reputable supplier, and you'll be setting yourself up for success.
And if you want to learn even more about this stuff, I highly recommend checking out the Steel Talks Industry Insights podcast. They've got a wealth of information on all things steel.
All right, that's all for our deep dive today. Thanks for joining us. And remember, when it comes to construction, a strong foundation is everything.
Build it right. Build it to last.